Trying to grow your own business online can feel overwhelming. What to post, where to show up, how often to post, what actually works. And for so many self employed people, it becomes another pressure, another thing on the list, another area where you feel you're falling behind. But what if it didn't have to be complicated? Today, we're joined by award winning social media strategist Louise McDonnell, and we're going to simplify online growth. We'll talk about messaging, content, systems, and most importantly, what actually works in the real world for small business owners. Welcome to Self Employed, the Forgotten Community. And it's great to have Louise with us this morning. Good morning, Louise.
Good morning, Dan and Dan.
And good morning,
Dan.
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 Louise, can I start with you? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your journey and the type of people you work with, and what are you seeing right now, maybe with small businesses trying to grow online?
Thanks so much for having me on the show, to both of you, actually. So my whole journey started when I started to study marketing in college. So like school was someplace that I enjoyed because there was a bit of crack, but I didn't really enjoy anything that I was studying. I had no real interest in anything. And I remember really struggling to find out what I'd even do in college. And I remember the day that I sat down in the marketing in Sligo IT, or ATU as it is now, and sitting back and going, oh, wow, I really like this. But from day one, and I know you both appreciate this, people used to say to me, so what are you studying? And I'd say marketing, and they'd go, oh, okay, advertising. So, it occurred to me, and it used to kind of annoy me, like back in the day. I don't know why it annoyed me so much when someone would say, oh, that's advertising. I'm like, no, it's not, it's marketing. But then I just quickly realised that people don't know what marketing is, and that's why they would just equate it to running an ad in the newspaper. And actually, Dan, to this day, I think people don't really understand what marketing is. So what I do is I take all those traditional marketing principles that I learned all the way back in the day when digital marketing and social media didn't even exist when I went to college, and I apply them to these channels, which in effect what social media is. So, LinkedIn is a channel, Facebook is, and Instagram and TikTok, they're just channels to reach your customer. But the same marketing principles are as important today as they were, back anytime. So I started my business when I was made redundant. I was made redundant on my birthday just after having twins. So at the height of an economic crisis in Ireland, living in rural west of Ireland, so it wasn't ideal. But I had no choice. And I had always had the ambition to have my own business, but just there was never the right time. And so my hand was forced, and I started my business. And I remember going back thinking, okay, I have a marketing background. I also had quite a lot of digital marketing experience by the time this happened to me. And so I started my own business, and I've never looked back. So today I have an agency. So in my agency, people can outsource their social media marketing completely to us. And I think that's important because I'm not just a trainer. I also manage clients' accounts all the time along with my team, so that we see what's working, we see then what's not working, we see how you need to adapt, because it's all, it's always changing. The world is always changing. How people are using the internet and how people are using social is changing. The channels themselves change. And so, yes, the traditional marketing principles are as important today, but you still have to be able to adapt to the environment that we're in. So my agency, I have an academy then where I have group coaching, and then I also have an online tool, Sell on Social, and that's for people who want a self-led solution to be able to build their own marketing assets.
Excellent. That sounds fantastic. And for me, again, I wouldn't be a guru when it comes to social media. In my own businesses, I find initially I was trying everywhere. I'll post a little bit here and post a little bit there. And I suppose it's a little bit like networking, isn't it? Unless you're specific with the type of networking organizations that you're targeting, then you're not going to get the biggest return, if any return, on social media selling. Dan, you'd be a networking guru. Would you agree when it comes to social media?
Yeah, my thoughts always were very varied on social media. But like, I know Louise, you're only a child, but we're of an age, that lot of our friends and colleagues just have an iPhone just for a phone. They don't know anything about it, you know. But we would be, and Dan is the same as me, we'd be very appreciative of IT, social media. Love it. I absolutely love it. I find it frustrating at times. And I was one of the people, Louise, and I know why you hate this, that all social media is for brand awareness. But like, you have changed my mind on this, you know? And then the other thing I found very frustrating, I might put up something, a post, very meaningful, a lot in it. People could learn from it, right? Nada result. And then I get myself and my dog, and I take a snap of us the two of us out on the beach, and it gets 1,000 likes. You know, so frustrating. But I'd love your opinion on that. That people like me, now you've changed my mind, but I'd love your input here. Is social media is not solely about building your brand.
Yeah, so and again, I kind of have this love-hate relationship with social media myself, and I think that's important because I know so many people listening in here will absolutely hate social media. And I say, like, it's completely fine. People seem to get confused between content creators or influencers and business owners using social media. So if you're a content creator or an influencer, your whole world is around creating content. You're going to be constantly putting up what you're doing, where you're doing, who you're with, because that's your business model. Your business model is to create content. So you have to be letting people see a lot inside your life, because otherwise you're going to run out of content to post absolutely every single day. And I think that has given a really wrong impression then to a business owner who, as you know, has many other things to do in their day. Like, they have the IT and the marketing and the HR and the sales and the accounts and all the other tasks that they have to undertake. And so my attitude to social media is go in, create content that's going to have an impact, and then two really good posts a week for some people will be enough. Now, Dan, you also mentioned that the analogy in relation to networking. It is very much like, if you consider that social media, whatever channel you're into, because I'm not even into I'm an expert in Instagram, I'm an expert in LinkedIn. I really don't care, because they're all the same. And you can get the same results, and we've proven it time and time again. You can get success on social media by, you don't have to be an expert in any given one channel. But if you treat it like a networking event, so if you went to a networking event and you didn't talk to anyone, you're not going to get anything from the networking event. And that's what, like, creating content is. If you're on social media but you're not creating content, you're not going to get anything from it. If you go to a networking event and you don't talk to anyone, you stay in the corner or you just walk around and look at everybody, you're not going to get anything from it. And that's the same thing with social media. So yes, as I'm saying, 2 really good, impactful posts a week should be enough. But you do need to network and interact with other people, or else you're not going to build relationships. And Dan is right. You build relationships on social media. You take those relationships to a direct message, like an individual message, and from there to a call. And that's where you're going to do the business. So I will say that if you want to use social media effectively, first of all, come with the right attitude. You don't have to love it. Secondly, you have to be crystal clear on your messaging. So what's that? What you're selling, the transformation you can guarantee your ideal customer, and the timeline and what they're going to achieve this transformation. You have to be really clear on that, or else you're going to go on social media and your messaging is always going to be weak, and you're never going to appeal to your ideal customer. Then after that, you have to have a system for generating leads. If you don't have a system to generate leads, like a conversation which leads to a sale, it's not going to happen. It won't just happen itself. You have to make that happen. So that would be, yes, my attitude to social media, that you can use it to, as well as grow brand awareness. Once you've got clarity around your messaging, you can use it strategically to grow your business. but it won't happen by itself. You have to have the right approach.
Yes.
And this is what I teach people in my coaching program, and I see the success that they have time and time again. So I'm 100% confident this works because I've seen it just time and time again down through the years.
Yeah,
I,
well,
I,
go on,
sorry,
Dan.
Dad, go on.
Yeah, no, work away.
I remember being on a course, especially since COVID. I found a big difference since COVID. But I was told one time that it has never been easier now to get your message out there, but it has never been harder to get someone to listen, because it is that transparency piece that you were talking about, that clarity. What exactly, how better off will you be by engaging with me and my product or my service? What is the transformation piece? So I totally agree with you there. And we still see an awful lot of people with this broad stroke marketing and this broad stroke where they're not hitting anybody's spot. They're just trying to get to the mass and end up getting nowhere. Sorry, Dan, you were coming there.
No, I was actually going through that. Then it's, I was going to say, if your message isn't clear, then obviously your content won't land. And I suppose if we look at it as three pillars: education, making sure that your story relates, and then your positioning is really important when it comes to social media. Louise, can I come back to you maybe and say, what does a simple content system look like for a busy business owner? Because myself and Dan talk a lot here on our podcasts about busy self-employed business owners. So what would a simple sort of content system look for someone like that?
So that's a great question. So what I would say to people when they're building, actually what I would call it is a social selling system. Okay. So within a social selling system, there's three pillars, right? The first pillar is, like, as we've just kind of touched on earlier on, get that clarity around your messaging. So there's no point in doing anything till you have all that bit of work done. The second pillar then is creating content. So creating content helps you build awareness around your messaging, okay? And then the third pillar would be that lead generation system. So I'll go to the content first. So what's working, and Dan, you alluded to it a few minutes ago, what's working really well, what always works really well on social media is the content that's more social. So the dog outperforming the advice, like that's just, it's as annoying as it is, that's just reality. So, we're encouraging our clients at the moment to create what we call social media as story-driven insight posts on social media. And so these are posts where you're telling a story, because everybody loves stories. And as Irish people, we're really good at telling stories. But what I encourage my clients to do is to bring those stories onto their socials. So I would say, like, if you're looking for a system for creating your content, if you can come up with a really good story-driven insight post once a week, and then if you had another piece of content besides, it could be a piece of advice. So as Dan was saying, a piece of advice that, it's really valuable. It won't perform as well as the story, but you still need that because that helps to position you as an expert in the eyes of your ideal customer. It could be, if you're on LinkedIn, it could be a poll. It could be a simple question that you ask, and then you might give some advice about how you interpret the results of this, or why people should answer a particular way, or whatever that would be. So that's a nice, real simple system, if I was to break it down really quick, easily, in that if you're creating that type of content week in, week out, it will have an impact. Now, it won't have an impact, it's not a light switch. It's going to take time because, you're going to have to build up an audience of people who see you regularly, and it's that constantly getting in front of them that's going to get them to know you and like you and trust you. So nobody's going to know, like, and trust you after one post, but if they consistently see you showing up, and then if you start commenting on their posts, and then if you come into their world, and then by the time you ever get to chat with them on a Zoom call or in person, they'll feel like they know you. So that's the piece around the content. That's that second pillar. The third pillar then would be the lead generation system. So, and this system will depend on a number of different factors. So if you're starting out and you're a brand new business and you don't have any audience, what do I mean by that? You don't have an email list, so you haven't built up an email list. So that's a hugely significant part of what step you're going to take to generate leads next. If you don't have an email list, so the people on your email list are your warmest prospects. They've signed up for something in the past. They've given you their email address, and people guard their email addresses. They'll only give their email address if they really want something, even if it's for free, right? So the people on your email list are the warmest prospects. If you don't have a list and you're tuning in, my best piece of advice to you is, social is important, but your email list is the most important thing. Okay. So you use social media to grow your email list. If you have an email list and you have a few hundred or a few thousand people on your email list, you're going to use different tactics than somebody who's starting out. So the other thing which will influence what you do is how long you've been active on social media and what kind of an organic, so how many people are connecting with you regularly on social media. So if you're brand new, you have no presence on social media, you haven't run any ads before. Ads are important on social media, particularly Facebook and Instagram, because the algorithm there automatically retargets people. So if you're paying money to get your message out on Facebook and Instagram, even if it's a nice awareness post or a nice story post, the algorithm learns who's interested. And anytime that you're running an ad to promote something, even if it's a free opt-in, it will automatically retarget them. So if you have been hanging out on social media, creating content, running ads, and you have an email list, or you don't, that will influence what you do. So if you have a warm audience of people who know you on social media, or people who you've been retargeting on social media, or people on your email list, you can do things like run a webinar, because you'll have an audience of people who will opt in and will show up and who already know you and like you and are maybe ready to buy. So you could run a webinar, you could run a master class in person, online, you could run a challenge. So, and they're the best events for getting people to show up and take action. So you can show up if you bring somebody into your world and you run the right, you still have to, you haven't done, it's not guaranteed when they show up. You still have to, there's a format, there's a formula of what you should do when they get in front of you. And that is the best environment to convert people from being prospects to customers at the one time in an event. If you're starting off and you don't have an audience, then it would be really not a good idea to do something like that, because you'd find it too hard to get people to register and to get people to show up.
Yes.
So in that instance, you have other tactics that you could use. You could potentially use lead assessments. So these lead assessments are really popular at the moment, where you get somebody to go on and you say something like, I just filled out one the other day. It's like, how likely are you to, what was it? You see them all the time. How likely are you going to get sick, or how likely, or, take this assessment and find out how you're going to perform. So I actually have a client who did one, and it was, how profitable is your soil? So it was for farmers. How profitable is your soil? Answer these 12 questions and find out how, where you're likely to be losing money and what you can do to make your soil more profitable. So there's an example of an assessment. You could have a guide or a journal. I had one client who did a journal. It was hugely successful for her because, again, it suited her client who she was targeting. It worked really well. And, you didn't have to have a large audience to start. And then what you can do is you can use these evergreen, we call these evergreen lead magnets, to build up your audience. And once you start building your audience, then you're into I'm going to have a live workshop. It's a free workshop, but it's limited numbers. It's 10 people, because you might only get 10 people when you're starting out. So there's kind of two different just very quick examples of a lead generation system if you have a large audience already, or a medium-sized audience, or if you have no audience, or, potentially if your audience has gone cold. So.
Yeah. Can I just ask there, I see a disconnect with the bigger type businesses. The owner has so much to do. They have a team, they have staff, they have HR, they have all these different things. And then they get someone to do the social media.
I know.
But there's a disconnect between the owner and the person doing the social media, because the person doing the social media doesn't know the owner's story. They don't know their core values. They don't know their unwavering beliefs. And the owner turns around and says, sure, you're the social media person. You go away and do it. You know, it was like back in the day when we'd all put an ad in the local paper and we'd tell the paper to do the ad.
I
So
know,
you
yeah.
like, this is the modern day version of, sure, look, you know what we do, you know,
Yeah.
do the ad yourself. So I think we need to create that a bit of awareness as well, you know, that if you're getting someone to do your social media, for God's sake, talk to them and give them the real story.
And Dan, I'll give you one even worse than that. So you're absolutely right, and that drives me absolutely batty that you would have somebody trying to do the social media who hasn't a clue, right?
Yeah.
Then you'd have somebody else who said to me, "Oh my God, I got this company. I outsourced to this company. They're creating 3 months of content for me. I'll have it back, and I'll have that 3 months of content all scheduled." And I'm like, "That's going to." I would just call it out and say, "Guaranteed, that's going to be rubbish, absolute rubbish, and it'll do nothing for you." Because if you're creating 3 months of content in the one go for another company and you haven't got like how many stories would you have to get out of somebody's head for 3 months of content? You know, it will just tick a box and it will be content. It might look on brand because it'll have all the nice brand colors, but it'll be generic. It'll be if somebody looks down through your social media and they don't get a feel for what you look like and what just even your photo, if you're not visible in your social media, then it is 100% not effective. If you've got just full of stock images and full of even AI generated images, then it will be completely ineffective.
One
That's
was being
fantastic.
taught, well, I'm sure you'd agree with me there. So just one last thing. I said we could keep talking about this now. It's
Absolutely.
all
We'd be
been.
here all day, yeah.
The one thing I would say is that I was told before, and I think you agree with me, Louise, that if you're saying people stop scrolling, if you're saying what they are thinking, you know, that's the transformation piece as well. And I think that's a thing that we need to keep in mind. As a Dan, back to you because we'll be here all day.
No problem. That's fantastic. And as Dan says, we could be here all day talking about this subject. But look, online growth doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to take over your life. And with the right message and a simple system, it can become one of the most powerful tools in your business. We'd like to thank Louise for sharing her insights today and for some of the fantastic advice that she left with us today. And you can connect with Louise by logging on to Sell on Social Media, and you'll also find her on all the usual social platforms. But remember, for today, you don't need to do more online. You need to do it better and more consistently. Thanks again for being here, Louise. And thanks, Dan, again, as always. And we'll see you all again next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Louise.